including oral epics. He will be the moderator for this session. Please welcome them with a huge round of applause. I would again like to announce that this session will be in English. I would request you all to please join. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody. We are here in the festival of Samanvaya, our languages and our festival. We are here from Karnataka and from the coastal region of Karnataka. If you see the map of Karnataka, you can see southern part of Goa and northern part of Kerala, and western side is Arabian Sea and the eastern side is Western Ghats. We live in this region. And Karnataka, you know, Kannada is the language of the state for education administration. But in this strip of the western coast of Karnataka, we have many indigenous languages. They are orally in nature by tradition, and now they were switched over into literary traditions also. I think if I can say that my experience as a boy, my mother tongue is Tulu, but I was a professor of Kannada for 40 years in Bangalore University, and I wrote many of my writings in English also. And this area is a kind of living laboratory of languages. By the time when I was the age of 12-year boy, I could easily learn at least 6 to 8 languages because my mother tongue was Tulu. I was taught Kannada in the schools and also in the surroundings. And the Muslims around me in my class and around me were speaking Biari language, which Hanif now represents. And the Christians and also the Hindu Brahmins were speaking Konkani as their mother tongue, which Yashwant represents. Jayavant represents. And the tribals were speaking Marathi as the tribal language. And some were speaking the dialects of Malayalam. Of course, we used to learn Hindi and English in the schools as a compulsory language. So 6 to 8 languages by the age of 12. Now I think I can say one thing, that with all these kind of multiple languages, we didn't have any problem of language conflicts, because I am now 67 years old. I have not come across a single incident in my region about the riots or conflicts based on the languages. Of course, there were communal riots, but not based on the languages. When we talk about the India, about the problem of languages, we are surprised why it is so, because in our region we don't have this problem. And we speak and we communicate different languages. For example, when Hanif speaks Biari at home, he is a Muslim, and Yashwant speaks Konkani at home. When they meet each other, they will speak in Tulu, not in Kannada. So this is a unique experiment which we want to just showcase with you. And the title is that oral tradition and literary tradition. Of course, any Indian language, living language is, of course, having the two platforms, both oral and written one. But regarding this language which we are discussing today, Tulu, Konkani, Biari, and of course I am talking about Kodava later, we are having both recently a kind of activism regarding writing the languages on par with other Indian languages. Now I think we can see Rekha with us. You have seen the map of Karnataka. Adjacent to this Tulu area, there is a hilly region called Coorg or Kodava. It was under British as the sea state. Now it is part of Karnataka. The hilly region, you might have heard the name of General Karyappa or General Timaya, or the Coorgis who are well known in hockey team and that one. And that language is a unique one. It is spoken by many communities, tribals and estate owners as together. One more point we want to discuss in this panel is that these languages are spoken by different religions: Muslims, Christians, Hindus, tribals, Dalits, artisans, agriculturists. So there is no kind of kind of separatism as far as this community is concerned. We will discuss about the heritage in brief, then the oral traditions, then the problem of switching over to oral to literary. We were talking about Chinua Achebe's African novels like Things Fall Apart, how these oral tradition writers have tried to have the strength of oral tradition into literary tradition. And also we want to say that what is our demands with the institutions or the state for our recognitions like Tulu and in the 8th schedule, that one. So it will be a brief one. We will limit to our times, and the first round will be talking about a tradition of the languages. Professor Chinnappa Gowda from Mangalore City on Tulu language.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your nice introduction to this panel. I represent Tulu language and literature. As Professor has been saying, my mother tongue is Tulu. I am a student of Kannada language and literature. I read English. So it is quite natural that a person in an arena like Tulu region can learn more than one language. I am here to represent Tulu language and its cultural tradition, literature. Tulu is a language which belongs to the family of Dravidian languages. It has got history of more than 2000 years. And great linguists, native as well as foreign, have studied this language, published research volumes. I am reminded of one particular statement made by Caldwell, who wrote in his book that Tulu is one of the highly developed languages in the family of Dravidian languages. It's a very great comment or complimentary to this language. And the speakers of Tulu language, see, Dakshina Kannada, a district in Karnataka state, approximately 50 lakh people, 5 million people speak Tulu. And besides Dakshina Kannada, of course, outside big cities like Bombay or Madras or Bangalore or even in Delhi.
In Delhi last February, there was a convention here. I have participated here. It is Delhi Siri Festival, Tulu Siri Festival. It was about 2,000 people participated in that festival. Yeah, continue.
So in cities like big cities, there are people, large number of people who speak Tulu at homes. So Tulu is a language spoken by more than 25 to 30 communities. I think there are only a few communities that are non-Tulua people. So if you go abroad, Arab countries, UAE, Bahrain, there are Tulu associations, literature associations, language associations, and even in Europe and American countries also you can see these organizations. So what I'm trying to say here is Tulu is a very rich language, both in oral and also in literary tradition. To say a few, just one point, the etymology of the word Tulu, it is said it's a very soft-spoken language. There is a fruit called jackfruit. One kind of jackfruit is very soft. So that etymology, they say it is a jackfruit that's very soft. Of course, there are other etymologies, more scientific, more reasonable. Reasoning that's also there. But another point I would like to stress here is this language is spoken across cultural boundaries. It is spoken across religion. It is spoken across region. It is spoken across professional. As Professor Moderate has been saying, many people, Dalits or other craftsmen, other communities, they speak. So I would say Dakshina Kannada, or traditionally it is called as Tulunadu, though it is Dakshina Kannada or South Kannada, but Tulunadu is the traditional name of that.
If I can add that one, when the German missionaries came to Karnataka in 1834, that's the first one who started the printing technology in Karnataka. The first Kannada newspaper was by German missionaries by Hermann Mogling. And now their successors, the Protestant Christians in South Canada, they speak Tulu as their mother tongue. That one. Yeah. Now I think when we talk about the religion and the languages, normally there is a notion that the Muslims in South India or Karnataka, their mother tongue is Urdu, but it's not the fact. Here is Hanif, who is a sub-editor of a Kannada newspaper, Prajavani and Sudha, and he is speaking Byari. He is a Muslim, he is from Coast Karnataka. It's a very interesting language, and he will be speaking about heritage of Byari language. Hanif.
Thank you, Mr. Rai. In fact, it's very interesting to note in Karnataka that Muslims of Karnataka are speaking 5 languages, their mother tongue, in various parts. Most of the Muslims in Karnataka are speaking Urdu as their mother tongue, but in the coastal districts of Karnataka, 2 districts, and in the 4 districts of hilly regions of Karnataka, around 6 to 7 districts, Muslims are speaking Byari as their mother tongue. And in one district called North Canara, that is Karwar, little north to the coastal districts, there Muslims are speaking Navaiti language as their mother tongue. And coming back to the hilly region of Coorg, the Muslims of Coorg are speaking Mapille as their mother tongue, that is nearer to Malayalam. And very interesting is 5 to 6 districts in North Karnataka, the Muslims of those districts are speaking Kannada as their mother tongue. They don't know Urdu. So coming back to the coastal districts of Karnataka, the Byari, around 16 to 17 lakh people, 1.7 million people are speaking Byari languages as their mother tongue, and they are very familiar with Tulu, Kannada, Konkani, and Urdu also. They are speaking all other languages also, but their mother tongue is Byari. The meaning of Byari is, once again it is a Tulu word called Bera, that means business, because most Byaris are doing one or other business in their as their profession, and maybe it is fishing, or maybe it is agriculture, but the major profession is business. So the word is derived from Tulu word Bera, and it means business. One who doing a business is a Byari. There is a popular saying in Kannada that normally Byaris are doing all the professions related to sea and river. If a Byari is going in a ship and because of a storm, if ship is down, then that Byari is not coming back to the land. He will collect the piece of the woods and he will create a boat there itself, and he will go fishing on boat. That is type of thing, the relation between business and Byaris. Historians are saying that around 1200 years of history is there for Byari languages. When Prophet Muhammad Paigambar came in Saudi Arabia, at his lifetime itself, Muslim Arab traders came to the coastal belt of Kerala and Karnataka. Before that also, historians are noted that before that incident also, there was people who are talking Byari language. Now they are called as Bovi community, Belchada community. They belongs to Hindu religion, and they are also talking Byari language as mother tongue in Karnataka. It's very interesting to note that 5 to 10% Tamil words are there in Byari language, and 10 to 15% Arab words are there in Byari language, and 15 to 20% Tulu words are there in Byari language. So it's a mixture of all these languages, and it's has got a very rich oral tradition and oral literature. There is no script to Byari language. We are depend on Kannada language for writing Byari language, but the rich heritage of folk tales and stories and poems and comic poems, that's very rich heritage is there for Byari language.
Yeah, when we talk about Konkani language, people always look at Goa, think that Goa is the motherland of the Konkani language. It is recognized by the government of India in the age schedule, recognized by the Central Sahitya Academy, Delhi. But the picture is different here. Konkani is one among the major languages of Karnataka also. And the Karnataka Konkani language literature is something completely different from that of the Konkani of the Goa. Here, Yashwant, Jayavant, what you want to take about the history or the heritage of Konkani in Karnataka.
थँक्यू सर हांव सगळ्यांक नमस्कार कोंकणींत भाशेचे विचार मंडण करतले सर कोंकणी प्रिंसिपली based on classical Sanskrit belongs to southwestern branch of Indo-Aryan languages. See, it is spoken in the region of Goa and other coastal parts of Karnataka, Maharashtra and Kerala. Because of enterprising qualities of Konkani people, they spread across the world. So this is speciality of Konkani people. And Konkani is believed to have originated from Sauraseni Prakrit like Assami and Bengali. Hence some scholars regard Bengali or Assami is the mother of Konkani language. Some historians, they argued that Konkani was language of Aryans. They came further to the south to the Konkan, and hence the name Konkani. Scholars like Katre, Dalgado, Kalelkar, Shanai Goimbaba, Kunna Rivera opine that linguistically Konkani is an independent language having more affinities with Gujarati, Hindi, Bengali rather than with Marathi.
About Konkani in Karnataka.
See, during 1187, first Konkani inscription was found underneath of Lord Gomateshwara statue in Shravanabelagola. There it was inscripted that Chaundarayana Karavaile, means Chaundaraya has carved this statue. So it is the first inscription in Konkani language. And in Karnataka, total 41 communities, mother tongue is Konkani. They belongs to Hindu, they belongs to Muslim and Christian community. In real sense, there is Sarva Dharma Samanvaya. In Konkani language, it connects different groups of religions and communities.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And now we want to look at the hill station, that is Coorg. And I think I was talking about this, because whenever I talk about the Coorg, two things starting with B. One is bravery and the beauty. I think you can see Rekha with the dress now. Now, what about the language, Kodava or Kurgi language? What is the heritage, Rekha?
Good afternoon, everybody. To speak about Kodava and its people, Kodagu is geographically and culturally unique place. So, it's all related with Kaveri. Kaveri is the goddess all people of Kodagu will worship, and Kodava is the language of the regional language of Kodagu, and more than 23 communities, including the tribal people, and the Dalits are speak Kodava as their mother tongue. And Kodava is a regional language. The word Kodagu derived from Kroda. Kroda means it's a hilly region. The people who are living in that place are called Kodavas. And more important thing is the historical evidences of this land and language starts from the 1st century AD itself. As the Sangam literature of Tamil, there are evidences of the land and the language also. And to talk to you about the legendary beliefs in Kaveri Puran of 2nd century, there are some evidences about the people and the language and literature. So, according to this, we can say Kodava land and language has got more than 2000 years of a great oral history. And there are some generals and marshals and soldiers. So even though Kodagu is a very small land, it contributed a lot to the nation. The first man, the father of Indian Army, actually, late Field Marshal K.M. Karyappa is a Kodava. And the person, General Timaya, after independence is a general, is a Kodava. And because of this, you can see even now, every family has got a minimum 1 or 2 soldiers. They are working as soldiers in the Indian Army.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned about Rekha, about the oral traditions. I think this is the one which we were talking about this panel, because the strength of these languages is the oral tradition. They're vibrant. All genres of it is maybe epics, songs, tales, proverb, riddle, or performing arts. So I think what kind of preservation activities has been taken place? Are they documented, textualized, archived, published, or how the people take it, whether they are taken back into the feedback to the people? What about Tulu situation, Chinnapagoda?
Yeah. Tulu has got a rich oral tradition. Since this is a session on Samanvai, I think I would like to draw your attention to the point that Tulu folklore has been promoting the concept of harmony. And the Tulu folklore or culture consists the components like oral literature, material culture, ceremonies, and also folk performing arts. These are the 4 major areas which constitute Tulu folklore. Restricting myself to the genre of folk literature, I would like to specially mention the long epics. The epic tradition is very much alive, very much vibrant, and the people live the tradition. I would say people even today, the singers even today, the performance even today, they live the tradition. There are singers, there are number of singers who can sing long folk epics. Let me cite one example. During last century, 1990s, Professor Vivek Rai, myself, and 2 scholars from Finland, Professor Lauri Honko and his wife Anneli, we worked for 10 years. We collected, we documented, we edited one particular epic that's called Siri epic, an epic which is sung both in ritual context, in a possession cult, and also in mundane context. The Siri epic, a very long epic, which runs about 15,682 lines. The singer took the net amount of singing time, he took 25 hours, and it took 9 days to complete the epic recitation. Why I am quoting this particular example? To tell you, to convince you that there are very many people, number of folk people, poets, singers, who can even today sing this kind of long epic. So that is textualized. And one point, since it is a Samanvai conference or a session, I would like to refer to one particular ritual, that is the Bhuta, what we call Bhuta ritual, or where the supernatural spirits are worshipped, the regional cultural heroes are worshipped. So during this ritual performance, these epics are sung. My friend Hanif is here. Certain occasions where there are some places where you can see both Hindus and Muslims, they come together, they participate actively in this kind of ritual performances. This is the best example, I would say, where you can find the people, they live together, they think together, they eat together. The real Samanvai is there. Of course, there are communal rights due to political reasons. I don't want to touch that. But otherwise, the folklore, the culture of the land, it strongly advocates the unity of the people. So there are folk songs, folk epics, riddles, ballads, and folk tales, which have been collected in a big scale. Both native indigenous scholars and foreign scholars have been working over decades, and many publications have been published. And I think I would say in Karnataka, scholars would agree Karnataka is leading, is forefront in folklore studies. But even I would go to further to say that the folklore studies in Tulu folklore studies is really systematic, is very effective, so that even today scholars from Finland, scholars from Germany, scholars from Japan and American scholars do come, stay for a long time, collect and document Tulu oral literature.
Yeah, that is, you talked about these Muslim and these local deities of the Hinduism. I think this is very interesting that I can remind that there is a Muslim statesman, I think Hanif will respond later on that one, is Babu Biari. He was a Biari, he was a tradesman, sea trader, then he was drowned in the sea, then he was deified by the local fishermen as a deity, as a Babbaria. I think this is an interesting thing. I think I want Hanif to respond to this one, because when we talk about the political situation, the communal riots, it is completely, in a way, politically instigated. But when you talk about the oral tradition, still the harmony is there. I think Hanif will talk about the Biari oral tradition and also about these issues.
Number of practices, yeah, it's very interesting. And even we can quote of Ali Bhuta also in
you are
Tulu
right.
Pardanas, Tulu folklore. Number of customs and practices within Muslim community also in coastal Karnataka, it coincides with and it creates a atmosphere of coordination between Muslims and Hindus. At the time of the most of agricultural families in Muslims in coastal Karnataka, in Bari community, at the time of Sankranti festival, that's a very popular festival in southern India, we the Muslims also going to our fields and taking out the seedlings of the crop, paddy crop, and coming to house back, and we are sticking it to our doors, and we are using the new paddy, the new rice to make sweets in our house. It's very similar to Tulu culture. Tuluas also, Hindus also doing the same thing. And at the time of festival of Sankranti, we are also decorating our cows and cattle and cattle very well. And we are not considering it a sacred animal, but we are also doing all those activities, all those cultural activities related to cattle. And one Dr. Sushila Upadhyay, who is a well-known scholar in English as well as Tulu, she done her PhD from Pune University in 1961 on Bari this folklore. But unfortunately at that time it was not recognized as Bari. Most of the scholars recognized it as Mapilla folklore, Mapilla language. But in fact, Mapilla culture is totally different from Bari culture. Mapilla is concentrated in Kerala, and so many number of differences are in between the cultural aspects also, and lifestyle also in between Mapillas and Baris. But the give and take policy of in the culture between Hindus and Muslims it's totally different comparing to other parts of state and other part of nation.
Yeah, now I think when we talk about the Konkani, as Ashmund was telling, it is the Catholic Christians, they were using the Gauda Saraswata Brahmins and Chitrapura Brahmins and tribals, many, like Kudubis, that one, because Kudubis are having a very, very kind of vibrant dances and songs, that one. Now, which you find the identity symbols of the oral traditions of Konkanis of this Karnataka?
Okay. In Konkani language, we have different forms of folk genres. Folk theatre culture is there, folk dance, folk songs, and folk tales. Proverbs are there, riddles are there, many more things are there. In folk theatre, Dashavatara is there. Dashavatara background, they perform folk songs, and later narration will be there. It is based on Purana Kathanak. Jagar is there, Veerabhadra dance is also there. And regarding folk dance, Pugudi songs are there, Pugudi and Sigmo. During the time of festival seasons, Navaratri, Ganesh Chaturthi, they perform these songs, dances. And Dekni is there. Dekni is a mixture of Eastern and Western culture. And Kudubi dance is there. It is a unique aspect of Konkani culture. Here, Kudubi, they belongs to tribal community in coastal Karnataka. During the time of Holi festival, they perform these songs. I mean, Kudubi is while performing dance, background they sing this Ramayana Katha. Kudubi Ramayana is there.
It is Kudubi Ramayana is in a way, it's a different from these classical Ramayana.
Yes, it is different from classical Ramayana. See, folk songs are there, Gumte songs, Palana is there. Palana means lullaby. Here, even till today, this while playing with children, mother, they use, they use this type of practices and they trace back their history to Goa. That is also there. I will tell, I will just quote that song. This is a conversation between mother and crow while feeding her child. Kakya kakya, tu goya gellalve. Crow, crow, you had been to Goa. Kakya kakya, goya dukkunettana, babbale, bailek dekilve. Crow, crow, while coming from Goa, have you seen my little one's wife? Kakya kakya, ti baile, iti manali. That little one's wife, what she said, kakya kakya, ti baile, hanga, yet mantalve. Whether she said she is coming to our place. I mean, Konkani people, because of this external invasion, this Portuguese and Portuguese invasion, Muslim invasion, and Maratha invasion, they suffered like anything and scattered across different parts of coastal Karnataka, Kerala, and Maharashtra. Till today, I mean, though we are physically in different parts of the world, heartily we are in Goa only. Okay. So that is still today it is there.
Yeah, that is an important because it's migration also. When we talk about the cultural migration and interfaces, this is languages and that will be kind of links which we can trace only through these songs like which you talked about crow. But then it shows that there is always a kind of dichotomy and relationship between the nature and culture. The production of any oral tradition is related to the geography, what we call cultural geography. When we talk about the Coorg or Kodagu, the whole hilly region, the whole production of the folk performances are related to the nature of that, with the Kaveri river or the hills. What are the major kinds of forms that you find in Kodava folklore?
We can see almost all genres of folklore in Kodava literature also. But because it is a very hilly region and geographically it's a very cool area always in all the seasons, it has got a dance form is a very peculiar and unique form in this area, this Kodagu area. And alcoholism is not a crime here. Actually, we take wine and alcohol and dance is very familiar in every ritual
It's a catalyst for that.
Yeah. So most of the times. Part of the food, and we give even we offer deities also alcohol. So this is the uniqueness of oral Kodava literature, and the most of the oral Kodava literature is collected by the foreign collectors and the missionaries actually in the first half of the 19th century. Then in the beginning of the 20th century, one native scholar, Koravanda Appaya, he collected and wrote one book regarding Kodava culture. Then afterwards, in 1924, I think, Nadikirinde Chinnappa, he collected all the folk songs of Kodava literature, and along with the Kannada explanation, he published it in the titled Pattole Palame. I think, sir, it is it has got a very major role in the Kannada literature, folk literature also. It has got a name pioneer text in the field of Kannada folklore.
Yeah, you're right. Now I think we are talking about this oral tradition, they're rich and very vibrant. But as we know that as far as the modernity is concerned, it is the writing, though we agree or not, it is the writing will give us a recognition and identity. So the writing has started from the 19th century, and then the literature, they were followed this, the modern genres of novels, short story, or the poems, or the plays or dramas like that one. But there is always a kind of criticism against this kind of trend that they are imitating the dominant genres or dominant forms of Kannada or Hindi or English. But when we talk about the African literature, Chinua Achebe and other many the third world country writers, they are having their different modes of writing, taking the oral tradition as idioms, as images, and the styles also. And what is the situation of the literary tradition writing in Tulu, Chinnappa Gowda?
Yeah. With regard to the Tulu literary universe, the Tulu literature has got maybe around 800 years of history compared to other languages. It's not that long. But it doesn't mean that it has a very weak history. Of course, the Tulu literary history is not continuous. 3 or 4 phases can be identified. I think the old Tulu poetry starts in the medieval times, 14th, 15th century. Then again, the missionaries, they started writing books in Tulu. Even interesting fact is that they wrote their lessons, Tulu lessons for the education for schools also. Then they edited books, they translated Old Bible, Old Testament, hymns, prayers. So that is one thing. Then during 1930s, a group of local writers, they united together and they started Tulu literary series that they published a number of books. And I would say only after 1970s, the Tulu literature movement has got a momentum, and all novels, short stories, poems, even big epic, great poetry epics, modern what you call Mahakavya, the great epic poetry was written by one poet, Mandara Keshav Bhatt. I would really tell his name, because Mandara Keshav Bhatt, he wrote a modern Tulu great poetry, Mahakavya, which runs about 13,000 lines.
If I can add that when that Anantamurthy was the chairman of the Sahitya Academy in New Delhi, I was the member of the academy then here in Delhi. So there was once a move to give Bhasha Sanman to Tulu writers, and I was member here, and I was academy president there in Karnataka. So Mandara Keshav Bhatt and Kedamajitte Peri were the first writers of Tulu who has given Bhasha Sanman by Central Sahitya Academy.
You are right, sir. And early in the first phase, the interesting thing is they adopted Tulu scripts. Then it didn't continue. So missionaries started, they adopted Kannada script, and that it continued. Today we adopt, our writers, Tulu writers, we use Kannada script. So there is in a realm like Samana to call, there is a kind of a gap. See, when it is written in Kannada script, a novel or a poem, when it is written in Kannada script, he should know both Kannada and Tulu. He should know Tulu language as well as Kannada script. So that's a part thing we can discuss later, I think. So the Tulu, I would say, the Tulu literary tradition is varied, and they adopt. I don't say it is totally a continuation of the oral tradition. Oral tradition is different, but the motif or the style sometimes is adopted in the literary tradition.
I have a question.
But otherwise,
I have a question to you, Chinnappa.
Yeah.
Because when they write these, mainly these so-called small languages, I should not talk like that one, writing literature, they have the same kind of, in a kind of structures and paradigms of the so-called Kannada or other languages.
Yeah.
But now, under the onslaught of globalization, and also, this coastal region is very sensitive for communalization. are such issues are addressed in literature?
Yeah, this is very interesting question or points to be addressed. See, the coastal Karnataka is facing problems, the ultra modern problems or mega industries coming up, say a problem of land acquisition, pollution problems, water pollution, or so many problems. What the big cities can have problems, we have that. So the Tulu writers, they have started reacting, or they recreate the literature so to address the problems, land acquisition problem or other social issues,
okay.
Dalit problems,
Yeah.
the problems faced by the women or the family system. So these are the problems
okay.
addressed by the Tulu writers. I think it is a major shift compared to the traditional oral literature or tradition. I think this is a very important shift.
There is a novel by name Mithabai Yamanake, which is a woman centered. It gives how the feminine identity, I think we can compare with, if it is translated to English, can be a kind of very good modern feminist novel, that one. Now when we talk about the Biari, the literature entered it a bit late, we know that, but even then, there are lots of new writers, very young. I think Hanif knows very young writers and very, very creative writers. What is the situation now in Biari?
Although Bari language has got around 1200, 300 years of history, it's fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know. The written documents are only 60 to 70 years old.
Yeah.
The written literature as well. One reason is most of the Baris were writing in the initial stages in Kannada itself. We can quote Mr. Buluvaru Muhammad Kunyi, who got Central Sahitya Academy Award for his writings, who wrote in Kannada. He is a Bari. And very interesting thing is most of the Urdu speaking people in Karnataka, they are not the major contributor to Kannada literature. If you are taking a list of the Muslims who are writing in Kannada and Kannada literature, the major part is Bari writers,
you're right,
Bari
you're
mother tongue persons who are writing in Kannada.
Yeah.
That may be one reason. We are very comfortable in Kannada and we are not comfortable while reading in Bari also. But recently, over 50 to 60 years, number of books have been published, hundreds of books have been published in Bari language, and Government of Karnataka is also established Bari Sahitya Academy in 2008, and it supported like anything. Recently the challenge of English is, it's not the challenge, I think it's a threat, threat from English to Bari is very high.
Yeah, and if it is not only for Biari, it is for Tulu, Kodava and Konkani also, because this coastal Karnataka region is the first region in Karnataka exposed to the west because of the sea trade. Then the people were exodus to Gulf countries, then to United States and UK. I think if you go to UK, you can live there for 2 months and you can come back, but you can find lots of people will be speaking only English. And this is a problem, but in Konkani, now what are the recent trends? I don't want history, but what are the recent trends in Konkani literature?
The Konkani literature, we can trace back to the beginning of 20th century only, because of cultural suppression recently started. In Konkani literature, we have Konkani poetry. Famous among them are B.V. Baliga, K.N. Rao Dandeli, M.N. Kamath, Swami Supriya, J.B. Moraes, C.F.D. Costa, and Melvin Rodriguez. They are prominent among them are. And short stories also very, very popular kind of Konkani literature. Gokul Das Prabhu is the awardee of Central Sahitya Academy Prize. And Konkani novels are there. Josa Alvarez, he has written more than 50 Konkani novels. And Konkani theatre is there. In Konkani theatre, Bolanturu Krishna Prabhu, for the first time in the history of Konkani language, including Goa, he staged Chandrahas, Purana Kathanak based Konkani drama in coastal Karnataka. So that credit goes to Bolantur Krishna Prabhu. And P.F. Costa, Chapra di Costa he is legendary figure in, is a great dramatist. And regarding Konkani journalism, Konkani Dirvem started during 1912. Rakno is monthly Konkani journal. Amar Konkani is there. Panchkadai is there. Jai Konkani is there. And Kodiyal Kabar. These papers, they promote Konkani literature in different forms.
Yeah, Konkani theatre, I think it is very popular. I think even the Catholic Christians, they are very, they have got a separate theatre in Mangalore, in Don Bosco Hall. It is a long back, it is only for Konkani theatre has been done. So theatre is one of the major, I think, in a way, media for propagation of the culture, I think. Now, Dr. Rekha, I can say, he had her PhD on Kodava theatre, am I right? So, what are the major kind of contributions as far as the writing in Kodava is concerned?
Kodava literature is textualized in the early of 20th century actually. In the span of 1 century's Kodava literature, we can see more number of novels and dramas, short stories, and more than that, non-creative writings actually regarding the culture and the beauty of the land. So many texts have been published. And the more interesting thing is, sir, the most of the writers are women writers. Women writers.
Why?
I think it is a patriarchal society. Kodava society is a patriarchal society. Even then, the writers, the ladies have much focus.
Women want to emancipate themselves.
No, in Kodava, actually in Kodava culture, there is no such discrimination about the man and women. Most of the
Okay,
yeah,
good. Yeah.
The equality is well maintained in the early situation itself, I think. Even the ladies, we are very familiar with the weapons. We use in our early days itself. We are very familiar with the weapons. We use rifles. Even the Indian Arm Act, we have that exemption. We are all keeping weapons, pistols.
Rekha, can I ask a personal question in
yes,
public?
Sir, tell me, sir.
Do you also use rifles?
Yes, sir.
I see. Good.
Yeah, of course.
They will show in the wall.
Okay, good. Yeah. Now this is
Actually, this is in a way in the part of the protection or the social culture. It's a very good practice. But most of the times, because of the use of weapons, most tragedies will happen in the families. It is depicted in literature.
Literature also.
Yeah,
that is good. That is good.
There are some unique features according to the.
And now I think all these languages, they have explained everything, but they have they have a kind of dissatisfaction that still they want some recognition, identity. Now, one good thing about Karnataka state is the only state which has established academies for all these 4 languages. In 1994, government of Karnataka, when Veerappa Moily was the chief minister of Karnataka, Karnataka government established Tulu Sahitya Academy, Konkani Sahitya Academy and Kodava Sahitya Academy, and I was the founder president of Tulu Sahitya Academy. In 2008, Karnataka government established Bari Sahitya Academy. I think it is a very good gesture from the part of government of Karnataka. But still, we are having lots of grouses. I think we will be very brief. What is for Tulu now? What do you want?
Yeah. Here, this is a question of Tulu literary sensibilities. So our Tulu writers have been trying, or even successful, addressing to non-Tuluva people. The sort of resort is only translation. So they have been, good translations. I think the second best option, whatever it may be, the second best translation is the second best option. So I think our Tulu good works have been translated into Kannada, into English. That's okay. But the point, as Professor said, the recognition by the Constitution. So there is a strong demand from all over Tulu land that the Tulu language should be included in the 8th schedule. That's a very genuine, I would say, it's a very genuine request, because we have been trying to say all these regional languages are very rich language.
It has been voiced in Delhi in last February. I was present here. 2 central ministers were present. They endorsed it. Some MPs came here, and still it is pending with the Prime Minister's office. We are expecting that one. I think before winding up, I request all my friends, because all people want to hear your voice in your own languages. I think it will be very short, but we will have a round. You can hear, they can sing, not dancing. They can sing or they can recite anything.
We have some best singers now.
Yeah, no, I think we will start from.
We are very poor in
Hanif,
singing.
Hanif, we'll from the ladies.
Okay, so, this is a part of Kodava folk dance, actually the harvesting festival dance. Urda mandulu kolu kilinja poile poile nadu parambulu kolu kilinja poile poile deva parambulu kolu kilinja poile poile igata devanda kolutta kuppu poile poile madevara panda kolutta kuppu poile poile ಬೈತೂರ ಪಂಡ ಕೋಲುಟ ಕೊಪ್ಪು ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಮರಿಯಣೆ ಕೋಲು ಮರಿಂಜ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಕೊಳು ಮರಿಯಣೆ ಬಾಲ ಮರಿಂಜ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಕೋಲುಟ ಕೊಪ್ಪುಲು ಕೋಲು ಮರಿಂಜ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಉರುಡ ಮಂದುಲು ಕೋಲು ಕಿಳಿಂಜ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಪೊಯ್ಲೆ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Yeah, excellent. Now I think there will be a Byari part by Hanif.
Yeah, most of the Byari parts are related to family oriented parts, songs, and this is a song, it's a folk song also. The husband went to sea for fishing, and normally for 3 days, 4 days, they are coming back after 3 days or 4 days from the sea. So the wife is preparing her rice roti in the home, and she is singing. Appa chudu chudu paatma ippa baru baru maapula అప్ప చుడు చుడు పాతుమా ఇప్ప బరు బరు మాపుల చుట్ట అప్పం కరిഞ്ഞിపోవు బన్న మాపుల పెరవు పోవు చుట్ట అప్పం కరిഞ്ഞിపోవు బన్న మాపుల పెరవు పోవు. But the recent poets in Byari, it's entirely different from the folk songs, and they are influenced by Kannada poetry as well. And I can quote one more poet of 4 lines of poet B.A. Shamsuddin in Byari. Belli bangaru muttu chorichengum idukku adu sama avuda idukku adu sama avuda ಆರು ಬನ್ನೆಂಗು ಎಂದು ರಾಕೆಂಗು ನೀನು ನಾನಾ ಒಗಾವುಡ ನೀನು ನಾನಾ ಒಗಾವುಡ. I think it sounds the Byari language.
Yeah. Fine, thank you, Hanif. I think now Konkani, I think because he is very with the rhythmic song he will sing.
Okay. This is a folk song making fun of westernization, because nowadays everybody influenced by western culture. अटकले रे पुटकले रे तेलांत पाचे माइके क बाबू जलो परंगल पाचे अटकले रे पुटकले रे तेलांत पाचे माइके क बाबू जलो परंगल पाचे काजूचे सरो पिवचे के बरो चढ पिल्लरी मोर्चक पुरो अटकले रे पुटकले रे तेलांत पाचे माइके क बाबू जलो परंगल पाचे. Thank you.
Now Chinnappa is remaining.
I think it is better to stop here, because I don't want to disappoint you here now. Okay. I think this is the most difficult time I ever face when I'm asked to sing. I just read out. I am not going to sing anyway. Okay. This is some 6-7 lines which I have taken from the great epic, modern great epic I referred earlier. This is a Mandar. The epic is localized, regionalized, and it is described that the entire story has taken place in Tulunadu. So the Valmiki is a local hunter, son of mountain. So that description. Badakka imaitonji ಊರು ಇತ್ತಂಡವಳು ಬಡಕ್ಕ imaitonji ಊರು ಇತ್ತಂಡವಳು ಕಂಡೊಡ್ದು ಕಾಡೆಚ್ಚ ಕುಡಿಯರೆನ ಪಡೆಯಚ್ಚ ಕಂಡೊಡ್ದು ಕಾಡೆಚ್ಚ ಕುಡಿಯರೆನ ಪಡೆಯೆಚ್ಚ ಒಂಜಿ ಕಾಡದ ಪೊಡೆಟ್ ಪುಂಡಿ ಕೇನದ ಮುದೆಲುಲು ಅಡ್ಕ ಬಾರೆದ ಪುದೆಲುಳಿತ್ತಿ ಪಡ್ಪುಡು ಪರಪು ತನ್ನೆ ತೋಡುದ ಅರುಟು ಮುರಕಲ್ಲ ತೆಕ್ಕೆಲೆಡು ಬರೆ ಮೊರಂಪಾಯಿ ದೆತ್ತರ ಕಟದು ದೀಯಿ ತಡಮೆಗ ಕಾಡ ಬೂರು ಮುಡೆತಿನ ಪಡಿಕು ತಿಕ್ಕಾದು ಬಡೆಕಾಯಿ ಮೇಯ್ಟೊಂಜಿ ಊರು ಇತ್ತುಂಡವಳು ಕಂಡೊಡ್ದು ಕಾಡೆಚ್ಚ ಕುಡಿಯರೆನ ಪಡಿಯೆಚ್ಚ ಪೀರೆ ಕಾರುಳು ಬಸಳೆದ ದೊಂಪೊಳಿ ಮೇಯ್ಟ್ ಪದ್ಪೆಕಳ ರೆಚ್ಚೆವು ಕಂಡೆ ಪಕಳದ ಪಚ್ಚೆ ಪರೆಲುದ ದೂಜಿಲ ನಿದ್ಪ ಉಂತಾಯಿನ ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಪರಂದು ಕಾಯಲು ಗೆಜ್ಜೆ ಕಟಿನಂಚ ದಿಂಜಿ ದಿನ ದೀರ್ಘೆ ಮುಂಚಿಲೆನ ದೈಕುಳು ನಡುಟು ಮಿರೆ ಗರಿದಿ ತೊಳಸಿ ಕಟ್ಟೆದ ಎದುರು ಮುಳಿಬೇತಿ ಮಾಡು ಚಡಿತ ಗಪ್ಪುಡ ದಿನ ಲೂತಿದಾಯ ಕಾರಡಿದಂಚ ಅವಳವಳು ದರಿದಿ ಗೋಡೆಲು ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಮಡಲ ಮಡಿದರಿದ ಕಡ್ಡೆದ ನಾಲಿ ನೂರಾಯಿ ಗಿಳಿ ಕಂಡಿ ಬಡೆಕಾಯಿ ಮೈಟೊಂಜಿ ಊರು ಇತ್ತುಂಡವಳು ಕಂಡೊಡ್ದು ಕಾಡೆಚ್ಚ ಕುಡಿಯರೆನ ಪಡೆಯೆಚ್ಚ.
Okay. Thank you, Chinnappagoda. I think moderator is exempted from singing, you know that. So now I think we are concluding here. Before that, there's a space for the audience to ask questions. Yeah.
You can take this. I can just go up there also.
Okay. As a theatre person, it was absolutely heartening to hear that folk forms of theatre are alive, and I mean they are the main mediums of expanding culture of these languages. My question is that are we also seeing the same art forms go down from one generation to another? Are they percolating just as much as they should, or they're just getting sort of limited to any particular generation?
Oh, who will answer it?
See,
Yeah.
nowadays regarding folk theatre culture, some sort of deterioration is there. It is restricted to few persons only. That deterioration is there. Yeah.
It's not passing on to the new generation because most of the people from coastal Karnataka are living in Gulf countries or in Bombay or in Goa, all Tuluvas, Baris, and you can't count the numbers of Tuluvas and Baris in Gulf. Almost all states of United Arab Emirates, hundreds of thousands, lakhs of Baris and Tuluvas are there. So the next generation is focusing on some other things, and once in a year or twice in a year when they are arranging some festivals and some interesting functions. But in some villages it is there. So for say in the case of Baris, Manjila Pat is very popular. For hours together women are singing that Manjila Pat. There are more than 67 ornaments a bride is wearing at the time of marriage. Yeah. The women are praising those ornaments. Each ornaments they are getting around 15 to 20 minutes for praising them. That type of songs are there in Bari, but unfortunately it's not written. Even today it's not written, and from our part also the problem is the younger generation is not interested even in language also. We, the Baris Welfare Association, brought out a dictionary around 17,000 Bari words. Now out of that also 7,000 words we can't remember now. It's all vanishing because of the onslaught of English. Yeah. Kannada is supporting Bari language, the regional languages in Karnataka, even constructing literature also, and even for day-to-day life also. But English is onslaughting us.
So are there any preservation techniques for these art forms, or it's just...
No, Tulu has done very good job.
Actually, I can say that because I think since me worked in the archives, there is an archive in Udupi. It is called Regional Resource Center. It's for performing arts. They got a very good, I think, documentation of the. You can have thousands of hours of documentation, visuals. Now they are in the form of CDs, DVDs, and DVDs, and anybody can go and watch that one. It's one of very good archives, that one. And there are many projects now. I think since I was a professor there, now he is professor at Bangalore City. They have got a department for Tulu, and they are having these students will be working for dissertations, MPhil, and they have got a museum of that one. So in Tulu, it's in a very, and one more thing he told that in Germany, while in Finland, there are a kind of archives for Tulu also, because of these contacts with this Tulu region, that one. But it's not the case with the same thing. And I can say that there should be a government agency for this, what we, according to UNESCO, the law of conservation preservation, all these cultures should be preserved at least in the archival form. Revival is second form, we call second life of folklore, that one. The archiving is very important. I think here this National Archives of India, they should take interest not only on this manuscript preservations and also the classical one, and of course this Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, they are doing something, but it should be a kind of, just like Linguistic Survey of India, that should be Folklore Survey of India.
So regarding the
Any questions? So we thank the organizers, the Samanvay organizers for giving us the opportunity, and also